everyone, I'm Thibaud.
And I'm Arthur.
We're delighted to have you all today with us for this exciting plenary on the amazing theme of NewSpace. So we are both students here at HEC Paris, and we co-founded the association HEC Defense and Space. So obviously this theme, well, is a theme we like a lot. We cannot underestimate the significance of space data in our daily lives. 60% of the data of the IPCC actually comes from satellites. And it's only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to all this significance in our activities. So in the upcoming 40 minutes, we'll delve further into this topic, trying to understand just how much space can help us to create a better world.
And for this journey, we have gathered 4 inspiring guests who are all more than committed to this topic. Please have a round of applause for the former astronaut Anousheh Ansari, the CEO of Exotrail, Jean-Luc, Eutelsat's Innovation and Venture Capital Director, Guillaume Scottez, and last, physicist and head researcher, Philippe Keckhut. And without further ado, let's now begin with you, Philippe. You're a VP Research and Innovation at the famous French university UVSQ. You're also a physicist and head research at LATMOS. Among all your significant contribution to the space field, you're also are a specialist in atmospheric physics and have more than 30 years of experience. More recently, you monitored also the InspireSat 7 program, but we're going to talk about it later. So first, could you please, in few words, explain what are your key activities at LATMOS and UVSQ?
Well, LATMOS is a laboratory focused on the research on atmosphere of Earth, but also from other planets. It's a long heritage from a laboratory created in 1978 by Blamont, working with rocket on space research. And so we have this big heritage, we continue now to work with our space agency, CNES and ESA, to develop instruments.
Thank you. And now, with further details, can you just explain us the concept of InspireSat 7?
Well, InspireSat 7 is what we call a nanosat, so a very small satellite that, in fact, is a CubeSat. So this CubeSat is a standard. It's very important to have this standard. And so with this small satellite, we are able to develop all the expertise from the design up to the collect of the data and the science we can perform with this small satellite. And so this small satellite is the second one of the beginning of a constellation. 2 is starting to be a constellation. So it's the second one which is working in orbit, working for the radiative balance of the Earth, so measuring infrared and UV solar radiation.
In this regard, do you think that the NewSpace has revolutionized your activities so far?
Well, it's a new step, but it's a kind of a continuity. Of course, the main impact for us as a researcher is that we are allowed to build an instrument within 2 years, which is not the case for big satellites. And so this is the first issue, the time. And the second one is that we need today to have constellations for research. And so to have constellations, we need to have small payload to also reduce the price, but to access to some information we don't have with actual big satellites.
And if we see the relation the other way around, what can NewSpace bring to the academic field?
As I said, at that time, climate issues are complex issues. And so if you have a standard satellite, then you will have a revisit of the same point after more than a week. And so for most of our atmospheric issues, we need a repeatability, a larger repeatability. Everyone knows that there is some diurnal cycle. And today we cannot access to this diurnal cycle from our measurements. And so these constellations will answer to these questions and provide better information for monitoring atmosphere.
And maybe last question, what would be your dream project in the future? What's on the line now, and what will be a dream project for you or for someone else?
Well, we start with very small satellite, 1U, so 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter, so it's a very small one. And so, of course, with reduced capability, that what we can do with larger satellites. So, of course, we want to go to larger satellite, but one of my idea is that we want to work more closely with industry because there is a lot of synergy to develop. And so most probably in the future, we may want to have some research observation, climate observations within operational satellite. Research don't need a lot of space, and so we can put a few kilos on any satellite. And because we have a lot of applications that require constellations, at the same time we may have some informations to monitor our climate.
Thank you very much, Philippe, for your enlightening answers. We have understood so far that NewSpace can have a tremendous impact on the academic field. Dragging back to the beginning of his journey, let's now hear about Anousheh Ansari. Anousheh, you were the first privately funded woman astronaut. You are also a tech entrepreneur, an engineer, and the founder of the infamous Ansari X Prize. But I won't steal the show anymore. Anousheh, the floor is now yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here, and I wanted to maybe, as an entrepreneur and someone who had the privilege of being in space, to start maybe by a little bit of an inspiration to get you started. I was born a long, long time ago in a country far, far away in Iran, and I grew up in Iran falling in love with the night skies. I wanted to actually go touch them, understand what they're made out of, and I imagined this whole new universe out there that I wanted to discover, and that's how my love of science and space started. I actually drew this picture of how I'm going to go to space. I showed my rocket to everyone around me, and I'm sure that no one believed that I will make it come true. But I'm one of those people who like to prove people wrong. So I actually did make it come true. And I had a picture of my rocket that took me to International Space Station in 2006. I had to search for the right rocket to resemble my drawing. So it took me a while. But my path to space was not the traditional path of going to a space agency. It was a different path, and it came through my entrepreneurship. Growing up, I thought there will be a Starfleet Academy. I watched Star Trek growing up, and I thought that that would be the way I would go to space, and there will be a Starship Enterprise that will take me to explore the universe. But when I came to the United States, I looked it up, and there was no Starfleet Academy. As a matter of fact, actually, only governments could fly people to space, and at that time, probably around 450 people out of the 6 billion people on planet Earth had flown to space. So I had to do something about it. And as I said, I'm a tech entrepreneur. I had great success launching tech companies. And when I sold my company, I decided I want to pursue my dream. And the first thing I did was to do something about opening up space to everyone. I met another gentleman who was also on the same path, and he had announced a competition, but he didn't have the funding for it. He was inspired by the fact that Charles Lindbergh flew from New York to Paris, and by doing so, he opened up the aviation industry and changed the way people thought about aviation. So this prize was supposed to do the same thing for space. And it was a $10 million prize and was very successful in attracting 27 teams from 7 countries. And they spent total of $100 million, and this is back in 2000. So there was no SpaceX, there was no way for any commercial company to exist. So this prize really changed policy, changed mindset, and changed the way people looked at possibility of going to space. The design that won became Virgin Galactic, and they're flying commercial passengers. It opened up the path for a lot of other companies like Blue Origin and SpaceX to be able to now revolutionize what we do in space. When we launched the competition, the cost of every kilogram to space was around $30,000. With Starship, and once they're active and flying, that cost will come down to $10 per kilogram. That's a massive shift. And that's why you see all these startups out there looking at how they can launch new businesses in space. And those possibilities are endless. We talked about communication and connection. There are 3 companies alone over the next 3 years will be launching 7,000 satellites to space. The number of satellites in space are increasing, not only to give us more data about how our world works, but also to connect us more readily to each other. We now are learning more and more about our planet and how it's changing, or the atmosphere, as you heard. And there are opportunities for future endeavors. One of the ones that I really like to see some of the entrepreneurs out there create is how can we actually take some of the polluting industries that we have on our planet and put them in orbit. We have data centers that consume a lot of energy and they need cooling. And of course, space is both cold and there's tons of sustainable solar energy. There are technical capabilities that we need to develop, but I think we have satellites, there are computers in space, and we can definitely use that for creating more data centers in space. There are lots of activities on board the space station, research around growing organs or growing proteins or crystals in microgravity that can all lead to new materials that will be an amazing opportunity for us. And of course, harnessing power of the sun and beaming it down to remote location and being able to provide sustainable, long-term, clean energy to everywhere on our planet. This is what we do at X Prize.
The X Prize Foundation runs incredible large-scale competitions around the world that set very clear, measurable, objective goals. The first person to build, demonstrate this capability wins the prize money, and the world gets the benefits.
Anousheh Ansari is the CEO of X Prize, which sponsors competitions to solve the world's challenges.
Competitions and prizes can actually bring innovation to solve not just any problem, but really big, challenging problems.
I think we're about setting a high bar. You want to set a goal for people that's inspiring, but it's also hard.
When we're designing an X Prize, we're looking for something that is audacious and achievable.
Goals that are far beyond where the industry is.
Problems that the markets have failed to solve.
To help people really dig into their imaginations. Creativity is everywhere.
We don't care who you are or where you come from. If you're able to accomplish this task, you win, and that's it.
1,000 years ago, it was only the kings and queens who could do anything on a national or regional level. Today, it's all of us. Anyone who's truly passionate, driven by a massively transformative purpose, can go and make a change in the world.
We are leveraging the genius of people from all over the world.
The tinkers, the entrepreneurs, the engineers.
People who are not satisfied with the way things are and know that it can be better.
It's all around hopefulness. It's all about collaboration.
Prizes are not about competition, they're about impact. And there is no better and more powerful tool to do it, in our opinion, than a prize itself.
I've seen things go from a paper plane to an actual spaceship.
We've seen private spaceflight revolution.
$300 million invested in the lunar economy. Over 10 million kids integrated into STEM education.
Technology that increased the rate of cleaning up oil spills.
Technology to help keep people safe.
To make sure everyone is healthy.
Feeding people, educating people, cleaning the air, exploring the oceans or space. We're changing what people believe is possible.
We want to have an ideal future, and it's up to us to build it.
So no matter what challenge you want to solve, join us on this journey. Just don't be satisfied doing nothing.
Thank you. So I'm very fortunate to now not started with the first prize that my family sponsored, but now I'm CEO of X Prize Foundation for the past 4 years. And we expanded our work over the past 30 years to include climate and energy, biodiversity, health, education, deep tech and quantum, and climate and energy. And we continue to look for entrepreneurs, those who really want to make a big difference, and we reward them with very large prizes. We have competitions in carbon capture, in rainforest biodiversity, and alternative protein. And we continue to see this curve that is growing and really making the possibilities of making a change available to every single person who has a desire and passion to make a change. And technology is becoming more and more affordable to make it possible for us to make it affordable and accessible for all, which is the mission of X Prize, to create an equitable world of abundance for everyone. I had the privilege of being in space and being able to see our world from that lens. And I realized that the map they show us in classrooms is actually a false map. It is not the way the world looks. It's not divided into colors and lines. It actually looks like this. This is our interconnected world, the world that brings us all together, the world that is our only home, and is where we all live and what we all need to think about protecting and collaborating on creating a really harmonized world with our ecosystem. So I'm happy to be here, and I look forward to learning about all the innovation that's out there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anousheh, for your inspiring thoughts. Often, NewSpace has been driven by individuals such as you that leverage their influence to truly make a change.
Oh, it's working. Right. Anousheh, over the last 20 years, you've seen something that we now call NewSpace. But actually in NewSpace, well, there are also very large corporations, just as Eutelstat. And we've got a representative of Eutelstat here, and I'm very pleased to have Guillaume with us today, because he is also a former HEC alumni, which just proves that you don't have to be an engineer to work in space. So just like everyone at HEC, you started your career by being a consultant. Then you went to the digital publishing industry. And then you chose the right path 8 years ago, and you were hired by Eutelstat, which is a good thing. Started as strategic project director, and now you are on innovation and on corporate venturing director. So just in a very few words, what is Eutelsat actually?
So Eutelsat is the third largest satellite operator in the world. We are operating 34 geostationary satellites and selling the access to these satellites to telecom operators, enterprises, video broadcasters, and so on. Eutelsat also, I have to mention it right now, is in the process of merging with a company called OneWeb, who is operating a constellation providing broadband connectivity with 600 satellites already in the sky and operating. And we are also part of the consortium. We'll build, hopefully, the European constellation called IRIS², which has been announced quite recently, and which will be funded by the European Commission.
So, working for Eutelsat, what does it mean for you? What's your role?
So I'm the director of innovation and corporate venturing. So I'm selecting, identifying innovation projects which are relevant for Eutelsat, and I'm coordinating the work of commercial and technical teams internally working on this project. I'm also the point of contact for institutions, universities, startups, working on these innovation topics. And I'm looking at potential investments in the startup ecosystem, working closely with our partners on this topic.
Right, so if you're entrepreneurs, listen closely to what he says. When it comes to innovation, what does it mean at Eutelsat?
So Eutelsat has always been at the forefront of innovation in terms of satellite technology. We have been launching over the years, over the 40 years of operation of Eutelsat, some first of their kind geostationary satellites. Just an example, last year we launched Connect VHTS, which is the largest commercial satellite which has been launched so far. It's focused on bringing broadband connectivity to the European countries, and it will be operational in a few months. So that's great, and that's, I think, a testament of the innovation path that we have always been followed. But for today, we are focusing on three objectives for our innovation strategy. First is to support our strategy in the telecommunications. As I mentioned, we are merging with OneWeb, and so finding new technologies and new services that will take advantage of this constellation and that will improve the services that we can bring to reduce the digital divide is, of course, one of our priorities for innovation. Second priority is to develop new businesses and new areas of development. OneWeb, and I'll come back to that, I think, a little bit later, is a great opportunity to develop new businesses. It's one of the, I would say, only constellation available today on the skies. There will be other iterations in the future, and there will be opportunities for startups, for new businesses to take advantage of this new infrastructure in the sky to develop new businesses. So we are looking at, for example, IoT, direct to phones, but also of observation. Even science project could be supported by this kind of constellation in the future. So great opportunity, and we are looking into that for the future. And the third objective is to support, our CSR objectives. So corporate and social responsibility is really important for us. And so we are, for example, collaborating with Ariane Group and Southern in the context of a France 2030 project to develop satellites that will improve the way we can monitor the health environment and make sure it remains clean for the future. So that's one of the key areas that we are also innovating on.
So NewSpace is quite a broad word. Where does Eutelsat lays in that ecosystem?
So definitely we are not a NewSpace company ourselves, but we are thinking ourselves as a next space company. So we are definitely part of this ecosystem, and we want to collaborate with everyone in this ecosystem. This includes institutions like ESA, like CNES, like universities working on these topics in France. So it's a super important relation to build with them and to improve over time. Second, we are collaborating with the industries. That includes, the legacy manufacturers like Thales, like Airbus, which are also super important in terms of innovation, but also all the industries like, for example, the car industries, the logistic industries, which are looking into space, to improve and optimize their business for the future. So working with them closely is key to make NewSpace happen, because it has to have a purpose in the end. There are great advantages to bring, to reduce the digital divide, to improve the knowledge of Earth, but also space is a way to improve businesses that are already working on the ground. And so these collaborations are key to success. And third, we are also, of course, working with the NewSpace ecosystem in France, in Europe, and globally. And so, for example, we are working with Exotrail on some of our innovative projects in IoT. Exotrail is providing us with software, with propulsors. And we are also working with a number of other startups. It's just an example to develop these new businesses, these new solutions for the future of Eutelsat. So it's great to be here and to create more links and to create more ideas and support them in the context of our development.
Right. In the context of the merging with OneWeb, there must be a new ambition. What is the meanings, for example, on an innovation point of view?
Yes, I tackled that a little bit earlier, but OneWeb is a great opportunity for us to innovate and to create new things and collaborate with the ecosystem. Just a few words on OneWeb. OneWeb is, you might have heard about SpaceX and Starlink. So that's, the most well-known constellation in the sky today. They are providing broadband services to end users. The only other broadband constellation today in the sky is OneWeb. It's a little bit less known because it's focused on enterprises providing B2B services, so broadband connectivity for airlines, for maritime companies, for telecom operators, and so on, all over the world. It's already there. It's operational, and it will continue to be one of the key projects that we will support, and it's an important European-based project. So OneWeb is great in itself, but today with the Gen 1, but there will be also new satellites coming in, Gen 2 satellites, and these will be great opportunities to first bring more capacity, to have better services on connectivity, but also to support other projects and other services. Because these satellites, when they are in the sky, they can embark additional missions, additional scientific missions, connectivity missions, Earth observation missions. It's a constellation that will be there in the long run and that can support all these new businesses. So we are really much looking at other opportunities and working with startups to develop this.
Financing is always an issue for any corporation, but especially in the space system where it's very capital intensive, and for new space startup in particular. What is Eutelsat take on it as a big company?
Oh yeah, that's true that in Europe, the financing of new space ventures is a bit more difficult than in the US. It's especially true when you come to the second stages of investment, and I think Jean-Luc will be talking about that most probably. And we need to collectively think about making new space known better to the investor in order to reduce the perception of the risk. And there is probably also an increased role of the, institution and public support, not only in developing new technologies, but also in supporting, the commercial development of these new space startups. It's super important, and we strongly support all initiatives that goes into this direction. Directly, Eutelsat, we are an investor. As I said, we are looking at potential investment in the new space industry. We won't revolutionize everything because at our level, we are investing a few millions in a selective enterprises and ventures. But as I said, what we can do also is collaborate with these ventures in order to reduce the cost of access to space, to create synergies with what we are already doing. And I think it's a way, in fact, to support the financing of the ecosystem in another way, but in a collaborative way.
Thanks. Space is one of the big forces in the space industry, and actually Europe's always loved to do things differently, so it must be true when it comes to innovation. What's your idea on it?
I think the two important words here in Europe are sovereignty and sustainability. I think this is how we are looking at innovation. This is a prism that is super important. Sovereignty, of course, because it's exemplified by the situation on the launcher, for example. There are many startups that need to be supported in order to guarantee access to space to European startups and European institutions. There are also other issues like, on, hardware issues, technology issues. So sovereignty is one of the key prisms that we need to look at when looking at innovation in Europe. The other word is sustainability. I think in Europe, we need to be at the forefront of preserving space as a clean environment and making sure that it can be used and utilized in the future. So this is also some very important focus for Europe in terms of innovation in space.
So this is one of my last questions. Will be for anyone wondering here, what is your dream startup?
Dream startup is a startup. There are two kinds of startups that we are looking at. On the one side, there are technology startups that will help improve the services that we provide. It can be on the satellites, making them more efficient, or on the ground. We are, for example, looking at new antenna technologies and new terminal technologies that are more efficient and that will be able to, for example, take advantage of both the LEO orbit, the low orbit of the OneWeb satellites, and also the geostationary satellites that we are already operating. So technology is super important. Then there are the services, and we want to develop more services on board our constellation. And we are thinking about, direct to devices, for example, solutions. These are, it can be through, it could be through innovative waveforms. It could be through services or payloads on board the satellites. These are the kind of ventures that we are especially interested in.
Thank you so much. And now we are switching to the flagship and the superstar of the French NewSpace. No worries.
No worries.
So, Jean-Luc, you are an engineer and you work for 16 years for the CNRS, which is the French Scientific Institute. You grew a lot of expertise there on various topics, and you also grew on a managing point of view. 6 years ago, you were the CTO of Exotrail, if I'm not wrong, and 2 years ago, you became its CEO. So, I'm not going to talk any longer, and let's just hear about your fantastic journey.
Yeah. So thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I'm very happy to be there today. Thanks to HEC for hosting this huge event. Pretty proud to be there also today because I think we can say that I'm a pure product of Paris-Saclay. And as you mentioned, I spent more than 10 years in Philips labs in Saint-Quentin-en-Yvelines. And Exotrail right now is also installed in Massy, so at 5 kilometers from there. So that's really an interesting ecosystem, and I'm very proud to be, let's say, a part of this ecosystem. So the idea today for me is to give you another perspective of space and to try to explain you what is really happening right now. It's important to have that in mind. And let's say, even if the topic of the discussion today is to try to think about how space could give us a better future, so I'm not sure that I'm going to convince you that we are working for a better future, but for sure that we are working for the future. The idea also is that through this presentation, I'm going to highlight what we are really doing at Exotrail and try to demonstrate that we are able from scratch to build a new space ambitious project, and especially from the Paris-Saclay ecosystem. So we think at Exotrail that we are in front of a new space era, and I'm going to explain you why and how it is an opportunity. So on the left of the picture, for the Star Wars fans, you have what is an Imperial Class 4 cargo ship. And on the right, you have an Earth Sea cargo ship. So you can see that the similarities are important, but okay, I agree with you, that's science fiction. Now, on the right, you still have the same cargo ship from the very well-known logistics company MSC. And on the left, for the non-space geeks, you have Starship from the SpaceX company, which is the biggest rocket ever designed and ever built. The first flight has been done a couple of weeks ago, And even if it failed to reach the orbit, it's just a matter of months, maybe a couple of years. It's going to happen. And it's real life. It's not sci-fi. And why it is important? We think that this rocket, this vehicle, is potentially a game changer of the whole space industry. And why it could have this capability. So we are here in Paris-Saclay in a cradle of innovation. So we are all interested in disruptions. This rocket, this vehicle concentrates 4 different disruptions. The first one is the mass that this vehicle is able to carry in space. It's around 100 tons in low Earth orbit, more than 20 in geostationary orbit. And this vehicle is also designed to bring people on Moon and potentially in a second step on Mars. The second disruption brought by this vehicle is the volume. The volume you are able to bring into space with this vehicle is, let's say, a factor of probably 4 more than everything else on Earth, which means that thanks to this vehicle, we are going to have the capability to bring bigger payloads, bigger objects in space. And then 2 other disruptions that are a consequence of the full reusability of this vehicle, which is also a first worldwide. The third disruption is then the launch cadence that will be achievable with this vehicle, probably hundreds, several hundred times per year. And the fourth disruption is the launch cost. SpaceX has already reduced a lot the launch cost over the past years. And as Anousheh mentions, potentially with this vehicle, it will cost you only a couple of €100, $100 to put mass in space. And so what all this disruption means is that mainly one thing, that the humanity is very close to have the capability to put much more things in space than ever before. Said a bit differently, the humanity is in front of a new era, and we think at Exotrail that this new era is an infrastructure era, but in space. And now, what is the link with Exotrail? If we, let's say, look back a couple of centuries or decades ago, when the market economy has accelerated, there were more and more needs to bring goods, to move goods from one area to another one. And at some point, the fluxes were so important that specific companies arise, focused on the mobility management. That's typically logistics company. And that's what we think at Exotrail, that because we are in front of this new infrastructure era, the vehicle I mentioned from SpaceX has the potential to unlock this situation. And that's why Exotrail is a space logistics company, the first of its kind. And when we think with this perspective, with this logistics perspective in space, you can think about lots of use cases that for some of them are already here, potentially a last mile delivery use cases to deploy satellites after the launch to reach their final orbit. But we could think also about maintenance in space, manufacturing in space, debris removal, because of course behind this new era there is a sustainability topic that we will need to tackle all together. And so that's the perspective we have. And now you're maybe going to ask me, okay, that's great. I understand this vision. I understand that we are in front of this new era. But what are you really doing at Exotrail? Exactly as on Earth, the logistics company, when you want to, let's say, to deliver your good, your parcel at some point, the first experience you have is a software. You describe your parcel, where you want to catch up the parcel, when you want to deliver the parcel. And the software of the logistics company is going to give you a price, a time. And then the logistics company is going to use a fleet of vehicles to pick up your parcel and to deliver your parcel. Potentially, they will use also a warehouse to stock some days the parcels. And they will use also a software to optimize the trip, the path of your parcel, depending on different constraints. So you understand that a logistics approach is a mix of software, of hardware, and services. And that's exactly what we are doing at Exotrail. We are deploying a wide spectrum of mobility solutions to offer our customer an end-to-end mobility experience in space. So today we are developing 4 products. First, a software to understand the mobility needs and to define what will be the most efficient mobility solutions to deploy in space, so a software. Then we are proposing 2 different mobility devices. The most obvious one, which is a propulsion system. If you want to move a satellite in space, okay, you put an engine on it, so that's what we are doing. And now an alternative or an add-on to the propulsion system, which is what we call an OTV, an orbital transfer vehicle. This vehicle is here to tackle the first logistics use case, which is, we think, here on a business point of view, which is the last mile delivery in space to deploy satellites after the launch. And the final product we are developing, exactly as on Earth for the logistics company, is an optimization software, an operating software. Because when you have all your satellites in space, you will need to operate them. And when you have a fleet of vehicles, you need to automatize as much as possible the mobility of all these vehicles, or these objects. So you understand that I'm very excited of this new era. That's an opportunity. Viewed from an entrepreneur, it's a kind of blue ocean of opportunities. So I'm really happy to try to catch this opportunity. And I hope that now you are a bit more convinced that there is really a new revolution in space. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for being here today. Sadly, this plenary is over now. But don't worry, we'll still be talking about NewSpace in the upcoming minutes with a pitch of many startups that are quite promising. Thank you everyone for being here and for your inspiring presentation. And I will now leave the scene under the careful supervision of the infamous Alexander Kushner.